Before we start, I'd like to introduce our speaker for the day, Ms. Khaudeja Bano. She is a seasoned healthcare technology executive with over 2 decades of industry experience. She specializes in development and approval of advanced healthcare products, particularly combination product and diagnostic tools. At her earlier organization, she has developed a safety strategy for combination products, and at Labs, her focus was on enhancing clinical processes and leading strategic outreach for product development. Her expertise span in clinical program oversight, medical device development, and regulatory compliances, with a strong commitment to product safety. And she is currently positioned as the Vice President for Combination Product Quality at Amgen USA, and she's joining us live from Chicago. It is pretty early in the morning over there. So, ma'am, a very warm welcome. Thank you so much. I know that you have a very, very busy schedule, and we are honored that you have actually taken out the time to speak to our students and help them make their journey, because most of them being freshers, they would require someone of your stature to help plan and start their career.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure what part of the world everyone's joining. It's a pleasure and an honor to be talking to young talent as you all. I would like to thank CliniLaunch for giving me this opportunity to present here. Hopefully, by the time we get done with our conversation today, there will be an opportunity for you to ask me questions, but also, more importantly, walk away with things you can do. Each of us is a very unique individual. What I want you to walk away with is each of your journeys is going to be very different. And while the journeys are going to be different, there are certain core things you need to focus on to make sure you achieve and accomplish what you are setting forward to do. With that, today's talk is titled Innovating for Safety, Transforming Healthcare through Strategic Product Development. The title, while it sounds very complex, what I'll do is walk you through my professional journey, give you insights into what my role currently is about, and then open it up for questions. Along the way, as I have lived through, let's say, 25 years of my professional journey, I have gathered some key nuggets of wisdom from whether it's my mentors or peers or even my students throughout my journey. I'd like to share those with you. So from a background perspective, I'm a physician from India, born and raised in Hyderabad. I grew up, just like any other person from India. I come from a very traditional background. After completing my MBBS, I moved to the US. First, I moved to Saudi Arabia. So I have a total of 9 years of clinical practice. I've practiced medicine just as a general practitioner, but most of my career I spent in fertility medicine. It was very early. So fertility medicine was very early in its onset. Once I moved to the US, so I got married and moved to the US, I realized that I will not be able to practice medicine without pursuing the whole relicensing process. So I would have to go back to school, complete my residency, fellowship to be able to practice. It was more of a necessity than anything else that drove me to immediately try to find a job. I completely switched careers, went into IT. So you can imagine a physician who knew nothing but patient care to have to switch into designing, developing clinical data warehouses. So while I went into IT, I went through schooling, basic certification program through Oracle University, but then I remained focused on clinical research and clinical databases. From there, I also continued going back to school. I did my master's in clinical research from UCSD while I was working. I also have a certificate in pharmaceutical engineering, and I'm project management certified. As I mentioned to you earlier, if I had to distill the one thing that has really paid off in my career and my journey, it has been the various skills I have gathered. So you may be sitting there thinking, what is this particular subject going to help me with? Any and everything you learned this far, and any skills and competencies that you gather this far and continue to gather throughout your journey is going to be not only useful, but will help you put things together. So what I want you to constantly keep at the back of your minds is, what transferable skill are you gathering along your journey? Nothing, no project, no activity that you have worked on will go to waste. So as I was working in IT, designing a clinical data warehouse, I was working for a company called Abbott Vascular. So I started in a company called Guidant that made stent, guide wires, guiding catheters, and pacemakers, defibrillators. But remember, I was working in their clinical database space. Part of my journey also has always had me involved. I've always been very engaged with women leadership and other employee resource groups. So as part of that, I was leading a women's empowerment group within the company. That got me access and visibility to senior leadership within the organization. So once the company actually was getting ready to launch its first to market carotid stent, FDA had come back and asked for us to conduct post-market studies. And the leadership reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in supporting that. Nugget number 2, when you are handed an opportunity, even if it puts you out of your comfort zone, make sure you evaluate and take some calculated risks. Those do pay off. So I participated in setting up and helping with those post-market study commitments. Fast forward, I got hired into the complaint handling team. In about 6 to 8 months, became a manager of the complaint handling team. And remember, I was a physician. I did not know any of these spaces, but someone saw my transferable skills and trusted in my capabilities, offered me opportunities where I had to take some risk, jump in, learn, make some mistakes, but make sure that I learned from my mistakes. From there on, I was a complaint analyst, a manager of the complaints team. I then was offered a position. The company got acquired and we became Abbott Vascular. From Abbott Vascular, leadership from other divisions saw my activities, my performance, especially during challenging times, during very tough FDA inspections or audits, and some very difficult situations we were in. And Abbott Diagnostics leadership offered me a position to move into diagnostics. There, I became an associate medical director. From there, medical director. Then I was, after doing 7 years of focused learning in devices, pure devices, all classes of devices, across the entire product life cycle. So from concept, feasibility, all the way to post-market and safety. I moved into diagnostics, all diagnostic types, about 7 years in diagnostic in total. Then I moved into what is currently my passion, which is combination product. And if you step back and look at my career, it was devices, it was diagnostics, and then I intentionally identified that I had a gap in my learning with drugs and biologics. So as part of that journey, Abbott also invested in giving me a leadership development opportunity and put me on an expat assignment in Switzerland, Basel, where once again, I was to manage cardiometabolic portfolio, working with marketing, understanding the drug biologic side of the world. It was not an easy journey because, as you can imagine, picking yourself up from an area where you are pretty established and getting into a whole new world is very challenging. I then became a therapeutic area head, grew into actually setting up combination product safety organization for AbbVie. I came back to the US, worked in AbbVie, so another total of 9 years in drug biologics combination product. With that, I grew through the ranks. I joined Amgen about 4 years ago to once again lead their combination product safety team. And about 2 years ago was offered the position of Vice President of Combination Product Quality. If you pause and look through why this journey, when I first signed up to become a physician, my focus was patients, patient care, patient-focused solutions. I had planned to treat patients one patient at a time. When I look at myself today, I always think of, am I still true to my purpose? And I want to say yes, but hopefully I'm doing that at a population level, at a product level. And as I have grown through these journeys, it's been very humbling. I have learned so much from everyone, every peer, every colleague, every mentee that has really helped me grow as an effective leader, but also keep me true to what I want to do in life. As I continue my journey, my focus always is how can I put patients and their safety in the center of everything I do. So today, when I'm in this role of quality, I manage a team that has complaint handling team. I have a team that works on product life cycle management very early on to obsolescence of devices and combination product. And I continue to make sure the strategy, the vision, the roles my team plays and I play always keep patient in the center and at the focal point of everything we do. At some point, we or our loved ones are patients. So it's not that difficult for us to think of the patient first. But we often get very carried away with designing things to perfection versus designing things for what is meaningful and relevant to the patient population, to the disease state, and to the specific needs of that particular population. Before I open up for questions and discussion, because I want this to be a very interactive discussion, the more questions I can answer, hopefully, I'm able to give you things that are actionable. To me, when I reflect and when I talk about what are some of the actionable things you all as students and new talent joining the workforce need to focus on, here are a few things. First and foremost, hard work can never be replaced by anything else. I know we all want shortcuts. We all want to get there fast. With hard work, keep your eyes and ears open for opportunity, the non-conventional opportunities, opportunities which expect you to stretch yourself beyond your comfort zone. While they are going to be tough and challenging, they definitely are worth taking the risk. They will not always be success stories. I have tons of failures that I learned from. So make sure you learn from your successes and learn from your failures. Second point, find good mentors and sponsors along your journey, people you want to grow up to become, but also people that you think are more aligned with what you want to accomplish. Third, while it seems like there are shortcuts, the shortcuts are very unique to you. So just looking at someone, people often look at me and say, she was just an MBBS, she did this and got here. What people forget, and I sometimes have to remind myself, is the years it took. So it's 23 years in the industry, the healthcare, industry, whether it's device diagnostic or combination product. It wasn't always fun, but it was fun. You need to enjoy what you are doing. You need to celebrate your successes. And most importantly, you need to keep yourself motivated along this journey. Find that motivation within you. Find the bigger purpose within you. You will find enough people who will tell you why you should not do something, but make sure you go with your instinct and work it through. When I talk about combination product, this is an evolving space in India and many geographies. There are just about 7 to 9 countries right now, and FDA and US are leading in the regulatory framework in this space. A combination product is a combination of a drug, a biologic, or a device, or a drug delivery system, usually. Any combination of those three, when they come together, that is what is called in the US combination product. This is a new word. It very early on in 2003 is when FDA acknowledged for the first time the term. But since 2013, we have had regulatory frameworks and regulations in this space. The reason I picked this topic is this is a very evolving space globally. And whatever background you come from, you have transferable skills. You can invest in learning about this and grow that keen interest to evolve to become a professional in this space. With that, I'd like to hand it back to you, Sneha, for questions and answers.
Soumya here, ma'am. It was a very inspiring story because we all come from a life science background. We wish to come to a place like yours. So my question would be, what are the challenges you face while introducing such combination products, like in the terms of patient safety or something like that? Like, what are the challenges you faced while bringing idea concepts into a product, and from product to bringing it into the usage? And those are all, what are the challenges basically faced in the product life, ma'am?
Thank you, Soumya. Brilliant question. Soumya, before I answer, can I ask you what background you come from? That way I make it relevant to you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm an MSc graduate in botany. Now I'm doing my advanced diploma in clinical SAS. And I've always been passionate about research, and that is the reason I came into the botany. But due to family situations, I couldn't pursue my PhD. But I'm always interested to work for healthcare and all those things, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Thank you, Samya. So I'll talk about both. First, I'll talk about professional challenges, but then I'll also talk about personal challenges. So when you imagine a company, most companies identify themselves as either a drug company or a device company. There isn't a company that identifies itself as a combination product company. And the challenge usually is, let's say I work at a company that is primarily a device company. To them, the drug aspect is miscellaneous. Their whole infrastructure, their research, their thinking, their mindset, their talent. So people, process, technology, everything is set up with that mindset of a device. So when they're looking at the drug part, so I'll take, for example, a drug-eluting stent. The drug, they have one or two scientists, I'm exaggerating, talking about the drug piece. It's very difficult for companies to truly integrate the drug and the device, different aspects holistically. Now 10 years later, it's much better acknowledgement that even if I have the best stent, if my drug has side effects, and if it is going to cause symptoms in my patient, for example, it's a problem. Similarly, if I have the best biologic in the world, but if my delivery system, if my patient cannot take it in the convenience of their homes and it easily delivers, it's a problem. So the biggest challenge is acknowledging the need for the other constituent part, but also making it organically, making it a part of your infrastructure. That's the key problem I see. The second thing is when decisions are made, they rely more on the primary mode of action, which is if you're a device primary mode of action, then they focus on how can we keep improving the device, or how can we keep improving the biologic. Oftentimes people forget that the other constituent part can give you that competitive advantage. I'll take, for example, the journey of insulin. Many of us know diabetics, right? If you look at the diabetics, whether it's type 1 or type 2, and trace back the journey from people having to do their blood tests, measure their blood sugars, then inject themselves with insulin, especially in type 1, before they do take a meal or anything, to today, we have continuous glucose monitors, continuous pumps that have sensors, digitally connected devices. We've come a long ways. So that's where I see the biggest challenge. From a personal level, as a female, constantly juggling family priorities versus your professional priorities. You need to have a very strong support system. I have stories after stories where I've had my daughter sitting in my office doing her homework while I was working. So, to us, we need to figure out and always have very clear priorities. There was a phase in my career where I had to say, I'm going to stay in this current role longer because this gives me the flexibility to show up to my daughter's picnics, her events, so that we as women have to, and many men do that too. So I don't want it to come across like I'm saying only women have to do those kind of sacrifices, but those are the key, I would say, challenges that I see currently. Also, if I can add, there is very limited talent, and that's why I'm here to talk to you guys, that recognizes itself as combination product talent. we have acute shortage. So we need to build talent that understands both sides, but make sure you understand deeply both sides before you indulge in that combination product space. Hope I answered your question, Samya.
Thank you, ma'am. That was very detailed explanation. You actually also said the thought which I always had in my mind, like we always need professional, these things. I mean, professional ideas from all multidisciplinary team is always is best when we go for innovation and everything. This thing I always had in my mind, even while doing my MSc projects and all. It clearly helped me out, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Samya. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, ma'am. This is Dr. Ambika Bera. It's a very inspiring story, ma'am. It's not only for women, for everyone here in this field right now. So my question will be like, as Soumya asked about the combination products, and you have explained it very well. Like, can you give us some examples? Like, is it still yet marketed? Any combination products?
Yes, there are. So, Ambika, good question. Combination products have been marketed for years. They did not have the title of combination product and did not have the recognition and unique regulatory requirements. That's what is evolving. So when I talk about drug-eluting stents, for example, insulin pens, when you look at EpiPen. So again, guys, I want to put a disclaimer out. I'm using these examples more as a generic. This is nothing against a company, or I'm not speaking on behalf of Amgen or any companies. This is just my personal journey and personal examples. So if you look at epinephrine, or an EpiPen, that's a combination product. If you look at any auto-injector or a prefilled syringe, all our vaccines, majority of our vaccines that don't come in vials, let's say, that are prefilled syringes or auto-injectors, they are all combination product. So whenever you have a drug or a biologic that is delivered through an injection that's ready-made, that's your combination product. So all the insulin pens you see in the market, these are all combination product. The funny part is the Band-Aids that have medication on them, that's a combination product. Very few of us realize that. If you look at a toothpick that has medication on it, that's a combination product. It's a class 1, which is general use device, but in the US, those are combination products. And there are other countries. So I talked about US. Japan has very clear combination product requirements. Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, South Korea is evolving in that space. China is coming up with its regulations. Canada has combination product requirements. Australia, Europe and US are very different, and Japan is very different. So there are 3 different approaches to combination product. What has changed is, 1, these are now called combination products. Second, they are driven by regulations that are focused on the primary mode of action. Plus, the expectation is you will comply with very detailed requirements and regulations for the other constituent part. So even in the US especially, even bags of tissue, cell, blood products are now considered combination product, and the tubing and the bag are considered the device delivery system.
Thank you, ma'am, for the explanation.
Good evening, madam.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
This is Badru Bhagavat. Your explanation is very well, madam. My doubt is, when we giving in combination product to patients, when it is acting actively, the adverse effects or adverse events will came. At that time, how we will differentiate? This is related to X product. This is related to Y product adverse effects. How we will monitor and how we will uh, differentiate in both combination of drugs.
Thank you, Badru. That's really close to my heart because that's how I evolved my career. So the way we do it, so the right way of doing it is when you're developing your product, right? So let's use an example of a biologic, okay? This biologic usually, let's say there is a biologic to treat rheumatoid arthritis, okay? When the company develops the biologic, it's in a vial. We begin with a vial filled with biologic where they go to the physician. The physician will load a syringe and give it to them maybe once a month, for example. When the company is thinking of the product life cycle, we are thinking of from a vial to a pre-filled syringe, which again is ready for use by the physician, to an auto-injector where the patient gets it, puts it in the fridge, takes it out, and gives themselves the shot very easily, subcutaneously. And then maybe there is a need to put it in an on-body injector or in a depot version. So when we are looking at the product life cycle, there are people who are focused on the device or the delivery system. There are people focused on the biologic. But there is one safety team that has the responsibility to look at the drug safety profile and the device safety profile. Many times, what happens is the safety organization hires device safety experts within their team, so they can focus on device safety requirements. Companies that do it the right way, when you are developing your risk management files and risk management documents, you bring these people together, cross-functional people, team members together, and imagine everything that can go wrong with the product. So you already have an understanding of what can happen with adverse events of the biologic. You now think, for example, what can go wrong with the device? I can have a broken needle. The needle can get embedded in someone's body. I can have a clogged needle. I can have a button failure. So what happens is in the device world, they develop failure modes and effect analysis. It's called an FMEA. There you think of all the failure modes in the device, all the hazardous situations and the harms that can occur. When you have that clarity, you know those particular safety reports can be attributed to the device. Then there are safety symptoms, adverse events that can clearly be attributed to the biologic. But there will always be certain ones that you have no choice but to attribute to both. Let's say there is a death that gets reported because of an anaphylactic reaction. Till you get the device back and you investigate, it could be because your needle guard or your syringe had latex in it. So it could be device related, or your biologic had something that this patient was severely allergic to. Till you get that back, you will not be able to confirm. In that case, you attribute it to both to be on the safe side. Does that help?
Yes, madam. Thank you. Thank you for your answer, madam.
You're welcome. I saw someone with their hand raised. Sneha, was that
Ma'am,
you?
yes, ma'am, that is me. Ma'am, while doing combination therapy, will the drug still show the same effect as it shows when it is individual? Means like a mono drug? Or will it have
Yes.
side effects or adverse effects, ma'am?
So that is why you have specific requirements and regulations now to make sure that the standalone drug has not changed because you put it in a device. So I'll give you a classic example. It's not even, so combination products are 3 different types according to US FDA. One is a single integral, where you have the drug and the device in one integral part. The second is combination product where you have convenience kit. So they are not together, but they are packaged, co-packaged together. There you have to connect the two and deliver. The third is cross-label. So to answer to your question, we are expected to conduct additional studies once we put the drug in the delivery system to make sure that neither is negatively impacted. We need to make sure, because you can imagine, I now have a vial of, let's say, the drug. When I put that in a pre-filled syringe or an auto-injector, there are things like the viscosity of the drug that can impact the speed of delivery, that can impact the amount of pain. So if a physician is doing it, they can use a wide bore needle. It could hurt more. But when I'm doing it in a fixed single integral product, I have to study the critical attributes and make sure the safety profile hasn't changed and the efficacy and the effectiveness, both of the device and the drug, are maintained, and my label should talk about all the details. The classic challenge when we first started combination product was sometimes the drugs had components in it or constituents in it that caused chelation. So it would erode into certain plastics, certain molecules within your syringe. We are way ahead of that now. We now have advanced understanding of what molecules interact with what plastic, what polymers, what metals. And that's where I think we are required to conduct additional studies to ensure safe and effective use of our product.
Ma'am, for this also stem line cells are conducted, ma'am? Stem cell studies? Or
Yes.
during animal studies, most of the time they prefer stem line cells, no ma'am? Cell line studies, ma'am. So for this also cell line studies will be conducted, ma'am?
Yes. So there is no compromise on requirements that exist today for biologics. You have to meet those for sure. It's the additional requirements now to make sure if you are putting that cell, those biologics, in a delivery system, you have a total understanding of how it's going to change the cell line efficacy, the safety, more important safety, but also efficacy, because you want to make it more convenient and more safe, not less. So we constantly have to consider the benefit-risk ratio of what we are doing, and is it worth that?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Doctor, I have Shruti with me at my offline center. She has a question for you. Shruti, please ask away.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good.
I
Good morning.
am from the life science background. I have completed my master's in zoology. So I have a question regarding nowadays, after COVID, we have started promoting our pharmaceutics to herbal and organic, right? There is boom in that kind of field. So in herbal and organics, there is a word that they will have the less adverse effect or no adverse effect. They will say like that. So if some of the adverse effects are coming for the patients or some customer, how we convey them that they should understand it is an adverse effect?
So that again depends on the various geographies and the regulation in that geography. I'm seeing, at least in the US, even those natural products are controlled and fall under FDA's jurisdiction. So not only that, FDA even monitors and controls our food. So it's much more advanced. I think for a company that's even promoting nutraceuticals, natural products, and other, therapeutics, other modalities. I come from India, so I know there is a lot of wisdom in those particular products. But there are companies that are doing a very good job of conducting studies, gathering information, and including it in the label. Again, it's very difficult to convince people. So whatever we as professionals in the space can do, because I think more than the side effects, what I have seen is it's drug-drug interactions, because these molecules usually they're very potent sometimes. The herbs, even natural food things. We have now examples of people being allergic. I'll take my example. After about 10 years ago, I'm now allergic to all types of lentils. As an Indian, you can imagine, I'm now allergic to legumes and lentils. So even natural foods, people have allergies to it. So it's more educating the population. And maybe the way we can do that is ask them to stop taking it and see if it helps with the symptoms. And then show to them that, yes, because it could potentially be caused by this very natural product. Your body is probably not handling it appropriately. Maybe it'll help them understand. But we do need to capture those. In the US, you are required to report those to the FDA.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, but good question. And I think, guys, there is a lot of potential in that area. So the more robust we can make it to make it safe to use, I think that's the right approach to expand those markets.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Hi, ma'am. So I have a question again. Since you were saying about the adverse events, now I have a question that if you have any adverse event reported after the product is in use in the normal public, so what are the steps you have as a company you should take, or what are the mitigations you face to reduce the risk, and what are the steps you take after the adverse event reporting in the combination products? Is it any different from just the drugs or something like that, ma'am?
Yeah, so good question. Post-market safety is a huge responsibility for all of us. So to answer to your question, you may already know what we do today. So if it's a drug or a device or a biologic, there are very strict requirements of every adverse event, every complaint, whether it's serious or non-serious, has to be captured. It has to be investigated, analyzed, tracked, trended, and reported back to the different government agencies. There are certain countries that want to know all adverse events that happen across the globe. So US is one of those companies, Japan is another country, Australia is another country. We continue to follow the requirements for the primary mode of action, but there are very specific additional post-market safety requirements when you have a device or another constituent part. FDA is very prescriptive of what all they want to hear about. So I'll talk about FDA requirements using an example. If you have a prefilled syringe or an auto-injector, and let's say you have a primary mode of action drug or biologic, you have the requirements to file, for example, the 15-day expedited reports in US. You also have the responsibility to file a field alert report if there are significant quality issues with your drug product. That goes in on a 3-day notice. And these are if you have significant risk of harm to population. Now, when I add a device to it, because of a prefilled syringe, I have to comply with 30-day malfunction report. So malfunction reporting specific to a device needs to be reported in 30 days. If I have a biologic, I have to evaluate and file a BPDR, Biologic Product Deviation Report, which is a 45-day report. I have to consider corrections and removals. So each of these report type comes with its own duration and how you report it, who you report it. So it has to be, you have to meet requirements for all the constituent parts. So it's very different. It's a lot more than just the drug.
Actually, in the cancer patients, adverse effect is more no, ma'am. What are the steps and what are the researchers are going now? And also, how can we be the part of that research?
Are you talking about therapeutics for oncology, or are you talking about any treatment that needs to be, that is available for patients who also have cancer? Do you mind clarifying?
No, ma'am. It means adverse effect, reducing adverse effect.
Okay, reducing adverse effects in patients with oncology treatments.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yeah. So as companies and healthcare professionals and researchers, as they develop any oncology product, when you compare or look at that therapeutic, our first and foremost focus is always to minimize side effects and minimize the negative impact of those drugs or biologics on the patient's healthy cells. And more, if you read on the developments that are happening in the oncology space, you will identify how we are getting into precision medicine, how we are getting into cell and gene therapy, or targeted therapies where the treatment actually only goes and targets cancer cells and attacks them versus the normal healthy cells and tissues. There is a whole different, and I'm by no means an expert in that, but there is a whole different evolving area in oncology around this. And more therapies are being made available where you can take them at the convenience of your home because they can be pre-filled into on-body injectors or in pre-filled syringes, but also their safety profile is way different because it's very targeted therapies that only goes to the target cells. What we do, how we mitigate that is we take the time to study those in clinical studies, all phases, phase 1, 2, and 3, and even phase 4, after the product is launched. There are usually ongoing clinical trials, phase 4 studies, whether they are physician-led or, clinically led under the manufacturer as, responsibility, where we are constantly studying updating our labeling, updating our package inserts as we learn new things, because the population we treat during clinical trials is a smaller population. Once it goes into the real world, and once you see the different ethnicities, different drug interactions, different ways people use it, different diets, their, genetic structure, we constantly are updating the label. I always tell people we spend very little time understanding our labeling. Please take the time to read through the label so you can understand what are the potential side effects.
Ma'am, and how one can be the part of oncology research, ma'am?
So in the US, I know there is a central database where all the clinical studies that are ongoing get registered. It's a government database. You can go search, and I think that's open to the general public globally. It's clinicaltrials.gov. Usually you can go there and see what kind of clinical trials are ongoing. Do literature searches. There are publications as people are conducting studies. You can reach out to either the primary investigator that's conducting the study, or look at which company is doing it. Reach out to the company website, and usually someone will get back to you and see if you refer you to the right channel. So there is no bias. You are looked at as part of the standard, patient population. If you want to get involved in studies, conducting the studies, I think it's a similar approach. Identify companies that have oncology in their pipeline and reach out to them to become a part. If there are job positions posted, look at those and apply for those. So both as a patient, as a professional, you can take that approach.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Hello, ma'am. Good morning. This is Tulasi here. So, I am a microbiologist by professional. So, one doubt that I had at this point is the combinational products is something that we generally use for a chronic patients, like as you mentioned for diabetes or something of that sort. Is it something that can be applied in case of a septicemia? Or I'm not aware, is something of that sort existing currently, as in for an acute therapy?
Yeah, so there are combination products. Great question. In acute settings, it's not just chronic. So I was going down the discussion of epinephrine. It comes in an EpiPen, and usually it's a matter of seconds, right? You just inject and it helps. So there are acute therapies. I can think of drug overdose. We now in the US have devices that talk through how to inject. Even for someone who's never done this before, it talks through how to inject if someone's having a drug overdose. So addiction drugs, someone's having an overdose, anyone can start using the device and inject the, antidote. I'm not very sure. Septicemia in itself has a lot of, how do I say it, lack of recognition. And I do know there is a focused group that's working on septicemia research. I'm not aware, at least personally, of, because of the differential diagnosis potentially being anything, people confuse it for many different disease states. Nailing down the diagnostics part first will then lead to maybe combination product readily available from a therapeutic point of view. I'm not necessarily aware of a combination product in that space, but keep doing the research. Keep doing that research, be involved in that. That's a huge unmet patient need because of all the lifelong consequences septicemia could have.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Nikita. And yours is such a remarkable journey, which includes expertise in various areas in this healthcare industry. I would like to know that what would be the calculated strategies that you considered while your transition of career into this domain? Like you invested 7 years of learning in this device technology. So what would be the strategies that you considered while entering into this industry?
So to me, I'll be very honest, I wasn't strategic about it, at least when I first joined the device industry. But once I take on a role, this has been a principle I have followed subconsciously, I think. So when I was working in Abbott, in total, I worked there for 19 years at 5 different divisions. So device, diagnostics, we had acquired a drug company. So I went into the pharma, then came back to diagnostics. The strategy I always apply is whenever I take on a new role, the first year I'm a total student. You usually take 1 whole year to even understand what's happening around you, at least for me. So first year, I'm a total student learning what did I get myself into. The second year, I try to find a small piece of that I'm very passionate about. The third year, I try to give back, so improve, whether it's a process improvement, whether it's how we do things, whether it's an organizational change. I try to give back in my little way. It doesn't have to be something phenomenal, something big. That way, in the 3-year time frame, I have been able to leave a little bit of my learning, take a little bit of my learning to my next phase. I have stayed in the same role in some cases for 5 years. So keep building on that. My strategy usually when I transition is it going to help me learn something new? So I'm very curious. I'm a learner. And again, I keep saying this, it wasn't easy. It's very uncomfortable, especially when I was learning project portfolio management. I'm a very people person. I like to talk to people, interact with people. So doing project management, I did that only because I wanted to speak the language that my project managers talk to me. Because many of the times they would say terms and I would think it's an English term, but it had a meaning to what they were saying. So make sure whatever you do, you are growing, you are learning. I also focus on what do I have to offer to this role. So even when I joined quality, I wanted to make sure that I was helping educate my quality team to keep thinking of patient first, because I come from a safety background. So I keep in mind, how will I grow? What will I bring back to the organization that I'm joining? And ultimately, how can I make it better for my final customer, my stakeholders? Do I add value? Those 3 criteria have always helped make the decision easier.
Yes, ma'am. I have another question. Like in current scenario, many drugs and molecules are failing after the third phase of clinical trials for approving FDA. In this scenario, the domain you're in, this combination products are now booming. What would be the booming projects as per you for the next decades, ma'am?
So to me, the risk of failure in phase 3 is the same. The combination product happens later. Once you have a final molecule or a final cell line, then the combination product comes in more as a delivery system or a connected digital device or software as a medical device. So that risk still continues. And I think companies are getting better and better to acknowledge if a molecule is working or not working early on versus pushing it too far down the road. To your question about where do I see things going in the next decade, I do see an evolution in precision medicine, personalized medicine, very targeted therapies. I almost think we will get into a phase where medications and medicines will be tailored according to our genetic structure. There will be a significant role of diagnostics, and it would be molecular diagnostic at a genetic level, hopefully, where based on our diagnostic tests, we will get a report card, hopefully, that says these kind of therapies will work for you, these kind of therapies will not work for you. And accordingly, there will be enough therapies available for all our different genetic structures that we get treated for our condition that works best for us. We have a long ways to go in that space, but the more we are able to understand the different genetic structure and the libraries are increasing, the exchange of information, making it publicly available is going to help all of us in our research. So that's where I think we are headed. Don't know if it is in the next decade. Hopefully it is in the next decade.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. It's such an insightful interaction.
You're welcome.
This is Tanuja. I just wanted to ask you that what are the challenges one have to face in the manufacture of combination products compared to standalone drugs?
So great question. As you can imagine, most companies, as I mentioned earlier, consider themselves a drug company or a biologic company. So they don't usually have expertise in device manufacturing. So one of our, as an industry, the biggest challenge for drug biologic companies is the reliance on device manufacturers that are not part of our organizations. And it could be a challenge, but it could also be a benefit. If you find the right partnership and the device manufacturers, because they come with that expertise, if you partner very well with them, and if the partnership has the common purpose of making the most safest and most effective, efficacious product, then it's a very good journey. The challenges come in where the device manufacturer is manufacturing devices just in bulk and without necessarily thinking of the combination product, because their priority is, making the devices, then giving that device to the drug manufacturer, then the drug manufacturer conducting additional manufacturing, whether it's filling it, shipping it, labeling it. So our biggest challenge as an industry is that reliance on different third parties and making sure we have that common purpose. Oftentimes, many companies have to rely on 2 or 3 different manufacturers because they have to make subcomponents and components. So there is, let's say if my device is an electromechanical device, I need to put a chip in it. that talks through Wi-Fi to an app. I need to rely on the chip manufacturer. I need to shell manufacturer. There are so many moving parts that reliance on the different constituent part manufacturer is a huge risk, because it's usually a small company that decides to close. Now you were using that component in your submission to the regulators. So the different components, sub-assemblies, assemblies that go into your device, and then ultimately a device manufacturer puts it together. Then there could be another manufacturer that puts the drug into that device. Then there could be another manufacturer that's labeling and packaging. So you can imagine you went from filling a vial in your own company and labeling it to this complex. And many times, especially with biologics, you have to maintain a cold chain. They have to be supplied at a certain temperature. So the more complex your device is, the more risky and challenging it becomes.
Got the point, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. So I do see a couple questions. I don't know if you want me to keep going.
Do you have the time? We hope, I'm sure it's a weekend and you might be having some other engagements as well.
So I have the time, so don't worry about it, because it wasn't planned. I ended up in California. So okay. This is like 4:50 a.m. right now. So don't worry, I have the time.
So I'll read out the questions. I think Bharti has written, can you share your experience while changing your career? Like what are the challenges that you have faced, is what the student seems to ask. Bharti is asking.
Yeah. So transitions are always hard, guys. Even if you stay within the same company, same role, when you get promoted, you suddenly have different responsibilities and they come with their challenges. One of the biggest challenge that I think you need to think about when you're changing your career is, how will I showcase what I'm bringing to the table? Because majority of the people in that team have years and years of experience in that space. You are the newbie. So when I first joined the complaint handling team, my first entry into this kind of a role, I had no idea what complaint handling was. I had no idea what the regulations were, what products we had. So the biggest challenge is knowing what you got yourself into. And that's where it is always important to look around the room, look in the team, and see who's the person who's willing to invest in you. Every department, every team, you will have 1 to 2 people who are like that. These are people who are very confident in themselves. They know the value they bring to the organization. They are not intimidated by competition, and they actually care in investing in next generation talent. Identify those people, set up regular one-on-ones with them, and ask them to point you to where you can get your learning to come up to speed. So the first thing I did when I got into, and I do this even today, when I get into a new job, I look around the room and try to identify that person. I try to educate myself on what are the fundamentals that are required for me to be effective in the job. Be prepared to acknowledge when you fail. So if you've made a mistake, be the first one to say, I'm sorry, I misunderstood this. I read it this way. I thought it should be this way. People are more forgiving when you are forthcoming with acknowledging you made a mistake. When you work hard, your hard work is noticed. So stay focused, do the hard work, keep showing that you are interested. And most importantly, persevere. So right when you think, oh my gosh, I'm done, I cannot do this anymore, that's when is that point you overcome that hurdle. So persevere and keep doing what you're doing. And if it's something you don't like, guys, don't do it just for the sake of doing it. Be very honest with yourself. Find something that you are passionate about and make that switch.
Bharti, I hope Doctor was able to answer your question. And Doctor, we have one more question, and it is from Anjana. She's asking, how do we approach innovation in healthcare product development while prioritizing patient safety?
So again, for me, it's a simple thing. So the reason it's simple is no one wants to compromise on patient safety. There is no, whether you are an innovator, whether you, Atufa, you may want to mute yourself. So whatever industry you're in, even if you are coming up with the most innovative product, if the safety risk profile does not outweigh, so the benefit at any point in time of your product and your innovation has to outweigh the risk. If that dynamic is not there, firstly, regulators won't approve. Your clinical study will not allow you to continue conducting your study. So that's not a compromise point. Your safety, your product has to be safe, because if you think of any therapy, every product has side effects. Every drug product, device product has risks and side effects. What that needs to be measured against is current gold standard of therapy. I cannot in any manner worsen the quality of life or the patient's safety compared to where they are at baseline. If I cannot demonstrate that with my product, that innovation is not worth it. So there's no compromises in industry or anywhere on that topic. So when you are innovating, make sure you are looking at the current gold standard therapies available, and that whatever your innovation is, it is making it better than that gold standard.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for explaining everything in detail. I think we have a few more questions. Jyotsna, one of our very bright fellows, she's asking, generally for a drug development or a device, it takes years to market them. Can we shorten this period while ensuring their safety and cost-wise? Is it possible?
So there are creative ways of doing things. So one of the ways, at least from a regulatory pathway, is many countries have come up with, at least FDA has, special designation called breakthrough therapies, where they give, if it is a disease state where there is an unmet medical need, and the company or the researcher, based on scientific data, can prove to the regulators that, this is a life-saving therapy in an area where there is no other therapy, there are very condensed timelines. Research can be conducted in much smaller population. That significantly cuts down on the research timeline, but that does come with added responsibility to continue understanding the therapy much closely after you launch the product or make it available. There are other opportunities. For example, COVID demonstrated this for us. There were emergency use applications. There is that pathway where, you can, under dire circumstances, applications can get submitted and approved for emergency use of drugs, diagnostics, therapeutics. So there are opportunities, but then it has to be the right therapy for the right disease state, backed by scientific data that can help shorten the timeline. Another way I'm seeing this happen more and more is companies will launch a product for one indication while they can additionally study other indication. And it's mainly driven by mechanism of action. The scientists take that mechanism of action and figure out where else it can be applied. And that's where I'm seeing a lot more expedited research going on. Another option is evidence-based medicine. More and more geographies and government and regulatory agencies are willing to look at evidence-based data they won't fully approve, I think, purely based on evidence-based data, but they will use that as supplemental data for expedited review process. Thank you for that question.
Ma'am, doctor, we have another question from Dania. She's asking how the strategic plan in healthcare is different in organizations in India and US, how it helps for the patient's safety.
So, my simple answer is the US regulatory framework has been established. It's a part of the government. There is a very rigorous process that has been established over a very long duration. Also, US has had its fair share of challenges with different drugs, different devices, and that has enabled or forced it to put a lot more rigor. Also, I think the funding structure is very different. The licensing fees, everything that, the application fees that go in, the advocacy, all that is very different. And I would say a lot more mature in the US compared to India. With that said, a few months ago, I was in India to attend a MedTech conference, and I'm seeing the Indian government really wanting to invest its resources, its funding in really establishing itself with state-of-the-art processes, procedures, regulatory framework to enable India really competing with rest of the world. Is it possible? I think it's very possible, mainly because the kind of talent we have. I think the talent pool in India is one of the richest. And I keep saying this because more and more healthcare life sciences companies are heading towards India for its reliance on the talent pool. And so I do think there is the need for government to acknowledge it, for talent to really invest in pushing for the right regulations, the pragmatic approaches. Having the right infrastructure investment will help. But to me, I do think India is picking up pace, at least from where I see it. Just the fact I'm talking to you guys is an indication of that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the answer, ma'am. That was my question. Thank you for the
Thank
wonderful
you.
session, ma'am. Yeah,
Thank you.
So, Doctor, we have another question. I mean, there are a lot of questions. I hope you're having ample time to answer these questions, or else we're already half an hour as per the scheduled time. Sanya is there when she's asking. She's from the molecular biology and human genetics background, and she wants to know about the roles of bioinformatics in the combination product and the challenges in the data repositories.
Great question. I think there are companies, I have seen bioinformatics be utilized more in the diagnostic space. And an evolving field is companion diagnostics. So I briefly touched on it while I was answering other questions, where bioinformatics is very powerful. There are certain countries, I'll say Iceland, for example, has a repository of bioinformatics and genetic data of its entire population. Can you imagine the power of that data? But that data is not readily available to others. It's available to the government. So the government does invest in utilizing that data effectively. A lot has to be done. First, to gather genetic data, to build robust, secure databases. And I know there is work has been done, but then acknowledge the power of bioinformatics and apply it. Companion diagnostics in that space, as I talked about where I see the industry going, knowing what medication. So firstly, having bioinformatics and genetics data to identify what populations are more prone to certain disease states is a win-win. What populations will respond to certain therapies? Again, it's a huge win. What populations will not respond? So there is a huge untapped potential that sits in this bioinformatics space that's getting its due recognition more now because of artificial intelligence. So AI, once this data will become more readily available, combination of bioinformatics and AI together, I'm very hopeful that it will become part of our day-to-day use. The challenge I see is there are significant silos in industry. If I'm a bioinformatics company, very rarely am I integrated with the people that make the therapies or the people that design the devices. So it's going to have to break down silos, have the right partnerships across the different companies or different researchers. And I think that will happen more in an academic setting. The likelihood of that happening in an academic setting is much higher. I hope I answered your question because, again, it's me assuming a few things here. There isn't much that I know of in terms of research in this space.
Thank you, Doctor. We have 4 more questions. They would be the last one. Sneha,
Okay.
student, she's asking, clinical trials for combination therapy, it's therapy same as that of mono treatment?
It's very similar, except you have additional responsibilities where you have to make sure that you have, for example, consent. For the consent form needs to include the drug piece and the device piece or the diagnostic piece. Your investigator's brochure needs to have all the information, safety and quality and efficacy information of both the components or constituent parts, the drug and the device. You have to gather more information. The monotherapy, you would gather safety data around the monotherapy. Now you have to gather complaints data, malfunction data, device-related adverse events data. While it is very similar, it's more comprehensive. Your data analysis needs to take into account the drug piece and the device piece. And ultimately, your labeling, your analytics tables need to include both the constituent parts. But in general, the principles of clinical research are the same. You still have to follow GCP requirements. For devices, there are additional GMP requirements that you need to follow to maintain certain attributes, certain responsibilities that come with the device.
Thank you, doctor. And second last question would be, as personalized medicines become more integrated with the combination product, what ethical considerations need to be addressed regarding patient data privacy?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is the rigor on patient personal health information, data privacy, cybersecurity, all this has a renewed attention and focus. More and more regulations are being published around this. That risk, the vulnerability does exist. You know, there are people out there that, you know, don't have the best of intentions, but it is up to us as people that gather this information. It's our responsibility to protect. So there are a lot of checks and balances that are in place, but regulations, clarifying expectations also help the case. It does sometimes cause more challenges because when we source and work with different third parties, we don't know what kind of responsible behaviors or, you know, if they understand the rigor that needs to come with personal information. So making sure we set up those expectations with those third party that we work with, and within each of our organizations, each of our roles, we do apply that rigor. I think we'll get there. We aren't totally secure and protected because of the data vulnerabilities that exist. That's a fair question and a fair challenge that we need to continue to put checks and balances in place.
I think the last question, ma'am, it is from Anu. She's asking, what is the future of nutraceuticals and supplements?
Unfortunately, I've not worked in nutraceuticals, but I do think more and more countries will come up with regulations in that space. FDA has very specific requirements because someone made this comment earlier, nutraceuticals are really becoming more and more profound. They play a profound role right now in preventative care. And the world is moving towards preventing conditions before they happen. I do think we don't have adequate checks and balances in that space. We will in the future, near future, start seeing more regulations impacting those branches. And we'll need to make sure we look at the challenges, the risks, the safety profiles the same way as we do for drugs and biologics today. I know that'll add burden, but the more I see, especially in countries like China, where there is a lot of herbal use, countries like India, where herbs are a part of our food structure, our day-to-day consumption, And the interactions with some of the herbs, with the supplements and with medications are not very well researched. I do think there is a need to do a lot more research in this space and really realize the benefits of these backed by scientific data. Thank you first and foremost for giving me this opportunity. It's been a pleasure. It's an honor to invest back in the talent, which I think I'm a part of. Many of us come from different backgrounds. The one message I want to leave with the students here is be very pragmatic in your expectations and in your approach to things. You will get success, but you will need to invest first before you get success. You will need to have patience. Sometimes or often, it's not a straight line, vertical trajectory of success. You will need to do things that you don't necessarily plan on doing as part of your career journey. When you start your career, make sure you enter with an open mind, because if someone asked me 25 years ago as someone doing MBBS and practicing medicine, if I would be the vice president of quality, I would probably be like shocked or tell them, are you crazy? Why would I be in quality? And the reason is we don't think bigger and broader. So take risks, keep an open mind, but have realistic expectations. My first job was the most difficult because it was a job that I had never done before. And to me, it was more meaningful to get my foot in the door in a company to understand what is the broad spectrum of opportunities. With your science background, you can work in medical affairs, clinical affairs, scientific affairs, regulatory affairs, commercial, marketing. Sky is the limit, but make sure you do it after you have invested and demonstrated that you bring value to whatever team you join. I hope the message sticks with you guys. I'm always there on LinkedIn. I can't promise I'll be able to answer all your questions, but always there to guide people, to be available as a resource to your organization. If there are things, focused discussions, please reach out to me. Also, everything I shared was just my opinion, guys. So it wasn't sound scientific research conducted on any of this. I don't represent any organization, as I said. It's been years and years of very, very humbling, honorable journey. Thanks to tons of mentors I have had throughout my career and continue to have. I learn a lot from all of you in every one of these interactions. It's good to see young talent really taking their careers seriously. So all the best to all of you. You could be my future CEO. I could be working for one of you soon. So good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bano. And the session was absolutely a delight. And we would be thrilled, and I think I can speak on behalf of our students also. They have been patient enough, and I'm sure they have enjoyed the session thoroughly. And thank you for the patience.
Thank you.
Super early morning over there, and it speaks volumes when you have taken out the time. So we are very humbled. Thank you so much. And I shall connect with you to discuss further collaborations. And
pleasure's mine. Take care, everyone.